founder of MetaTFT. We've been running for like 5 years now. And yeah, I basically think about TFT data like day in, day out for the last 5 years. So I've got quite a bit of experience in this area. I come from like a data science background as well. So that's part of what I wanted to do with the advanced mode, is bring some of that kind of like stats knowledge and try and like educate or share it with like the wider TFT community through the Explorer. So yeah, did you say did people have questions about the advanced mode? Like, because I could do like a bit of a talk through like how it works, what it's doing, like maybe mention like confidence intervals as well, because I don't know how familiar people will be with that.
Yeah, a brief overview could be useful, and then I'm also like curious how you choose between like average versus worst case for the on the left most toggle. But I guess there
Yeah.
may are people that are not familiar with what each of these things you're showing in the advanced one could be, and like I've been using it for like lower sample size stuff, just to get.
Mhm.
I feel like well, I've noticed, and there's also a really useful Reddit comment on the thread you posted of, I think, GM Blue, mentioning like it seems as if on lower sample size things like 3-item builds, it seems to
Yeah.
identify what people tend to notice as true BIS better than not advanced mode with
Mhm.
these stats revealed. And so I've been trusting it more so for things like artifacts, things that are more on like the low thousands of sample sizes, but or even
Yeah.
lower. And so, but yeah, down to hear your overview.
That's exactly when advanced mode should be used, and is like best used is when you have low sample size queries.
Mm.
So basically, if we're looking at Annie here and we just sort by average place, what you get at the top is just a bunch of kind of like weird looking low sample size builds. And this is like, as this says, it's a 3.14. Like, that's not really a 3.14. That's just like statistically, that's probably an outlier. And so it's kind of like hard to compare between, you know, a 3.14 with 100 games and then a 3.14 with like 1,000 or 10,000 games.
Mhm.
Basically, what you've got is like, let me get a pen. You have like a distribution of when you measure like the average placement, you end up with like a kind of like normal distribution of where your placement will be. And let's say like it appears like it's 3.14 or 3.41. What was it? Yeah, 3.14.
Mhm.
But realistically, it could be anywhere in like this range. We can actually look at what that range is if we turn it on. So 2.93 to 3.35 is saying. So turn back to average. And what happens is the more games you build up, this like normal distribution actually like comes in. So if you have like, if you want it to be like 2 times accurate, this scales with like the sample size squared. So you need 4 times as many games to kind of like get twice as accurate.
Mhm.
And you'll see that maybe like as you increase the number of games, we can do that here just by adding a few more ranks. That build will probably disappear. Yeah.
Yeah, the
That was
Trojan
like,
Archangel. I think it was Trojan Archangel, and I forget the third item. Adaptive.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, advanced mode is basically if you're working with low sample size data, like you said, like 3-item builds, you kind of want to have a way that you can compare like numbers with different sample sizes. And so if you compare the 95% worst case scenario, which
Mhm.
is on this one, you're comparing this value with this one. So like maybe the red, the average actually is slightly, might be slightly worse than the black line, but you've got 4 times the sample size, so you can be twice as confident in that value. And so it's a way of like comparing kind of data between like a high sample size and a low sample size fairly. And it basically does the job of removing a lot of noise with kind of like random items that you wouldn't expect to see up at the top. That being said, it doesn't correct for everything. It's great at correcting for low sample size, but it doesn't correct for survivorship bias, which I think was one of Ace's questions, which I'll cover in a little bit. And so here, if we look at Annie builds, like Annie build is maybe a bad example because she's often itemized like second in her comp. One thing I like to do is just look at the games tab and just see what kind of games she's being played in here with these filters, and then that can kind of help you like narrow down on filters that you want to add to kind of remove games that you're maybe not really looking for. Like if I was looking at Annie builds, I'd probably be looking at like AMP Annie, and so I don't want Golden Ox games. And then I'd probably want Annie as like a primary carry if I was looking at her build stats, and say I might exclude like Yumi carry games. So I'd like doing Yumi 3 with 3 items excluded. This means I could have Yumi with 2 items, but this is going to capture mainly games with like an Annie primary carry. And if I look at the build stats now and like the item stats, we got rid of like Void Staff has dropped way down. It's like a place change. Interesting.
Why
Blue
would
buff
this
is
second? I
kind of
guess you're
fairly
saying
low.
this second void staff thing is just really low. I guess it's really low sample size. So you just
Yeah, this is again. So if we look at this, there's many rows in this table, and basically the more rows in your table, the more likely you are to have outliers at the top and bottom. So probably the second void staff is an outlier. But one thing you can do if you get something that's a bit weird is, just click on it and add it to your filters and just look at the games and see if you see anything in the games that kind of stands out. So
gotcha.
there's a lot of Golden Ox boards in here. So probably we're still capturing, because I didn't exclude Golden Ox before.
I see.
Here
This
I
could
can
be a
add
scenario
any Golden Ox.
where you print a bunch of items and you're just slamming whatever you have per
Yeah,
table.
it could be.
I
Yeah.
can believe that. That makes sense.
So
I
this
didn't know
is
you
this
can.
is one trick that I like
I like
to
that.
kind of like explore.
Yeah. I like that shortcut you're showing of just like you just click on it in the row and then it shows up as a filter and then you can look at games and then hit exclude, I
Yeah,
guess. Yeah, I like that.
yeah. So excluding Golden Ox, that second void stuff's gone away.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one little hack or trick that I like. Is like just looking at real games. These are all games. This one literally finished a few seconds ago. That's what, a minute ago. Just like looking at the live games that are in your data source and filtering out ones that you actually aren't really looking at the stats for. That's kind of like the biggest way to combat survivorship bias, I think, is just constructing your filters in such a way that you eliminate the games where maybe like the unit you're looking at is a secondary carry rather than a primary carry. Secondary carries tend to get like a bunch of leftover items, but their stats look amazing because you're only getting those items if you're like super late game or like farming them with ergot or something like. So went off on a bit of a tangent there, but that kind of covers how I like to use the advanced mode. I think actually what I'll tend to use is actually like turn the error bars off and then just look at 95% worst case. And then it's basically the kind of the Explorer interface you're used to using, but it's removing a lot of the low sample size data towards the top. And then if you feel like it's kind of a bit like weird items at the top, you can try changing that confidence interval. But yeah, quick summary about advanced mode is basically if you don't want to see low sample size stuff at the top, you can add advanced mode and just put it to like 95% or 99%. It'll get rid of a lot of it will kind of like penalize those sample size builds, but it won't penalize high sample size builds as much. And so you'll kind of get a bit more what you're expecting to see at the top.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like it's been super helpful using it for such use case. We'll continue to do it, but appreciate the overview. On the I guess we had a few or I guess if you wanted to go more over Advanced Explorer, that's fine as well. But we had also had the questions, and then one thing you brought up
Yeah.
just reminds me of one of the questions. One of the things you brought up reminds me of one of the questions that I had, which was as you're comparing Annie and Yumi, or like removing Yumi 3 item from the Explorer query you made. Do you have
Yeah.
tips on how you would know, like, yeah, maybe it is the case that Annie is a lot better without void staff when you don't have 3 item Yumi, but is it possible that 3 item Yumi primary and just having support items on Annie is actually just better, even if you're Annie 2? At least I've seen a lot of good players put 3 items on Yumi 2, like better items on Yumi 2, and just whatever on Annie.
Yeah.
But like any suggestions on how you would use
Yeah.
stats to help inform your decisions on those?
So what I would do here is let's do the Annie Yumi as we've kind of been looking at. So I guess you probably want 4 or more amp. So first of all, you want to kind of like narrow in on the comp you're looking at. This looks about right, would you say? These kind of games.
Yeah, I think so.
So first of all, what I would do is exclude 1. So this is Yumi with 3 items and Annie with less than 3 items, basically. It's just excluding Annie with 3 items. And kind of what that does is you're showing Yumi's probably going to be your primary carry, and then Annie will be your secondary carry. And so this has an average placement of 4.43.
Yeah.
And then we can just swap that over. And Annie with 3 items and Yumi without 3 items has 4.28. So that kind of indicates that Annie is probably better with 3 items and Yumi not.
I guess my fear with doing exactly this, I have a hard time showing this in the stats or reasoning through what to say, which is that you will likely capture a lot of the games where people stay a lower level and intend their whole game plan is intended to 3-star the Yumi. And when we include those games, which is basically you'd want to ideally capture like how many Yumis on bench and exclude scenarios where you have like 7 and 8 Yumis on bench from your
Yeah.
query, I guess. But
So
yeah,
I
it's
kind
probably
of
very
think
difficult to move those games.
it's fair to include those. Like one probably mistake I see a lot of people doing is if they're thinking about Yumi 3, they do Yumi 3. And like Yumi 3 obviously has like insane stats because it's a 3-star 3 cost. They're not super
Yeah.
reliable. I think you maybe hit it like 50 or 60% of the games that you actually aim for it. And so whenever I'm looking at stats, I normally don't specify a star level, just because it can introduce bias there. And I think it's actually fine to capture games where people went for Yumi 3 and didn't hit. Like that's fair. Like that should be reflected in the stats.
Gotcha.
maybe if I wanted to narrow down on this a bit more.
I noticed a lot of these ones with 3M Yumi and not any are like lower rank games. I think that's not surprising to me,
I
but
bumped the ranks up. Yeah, I was adding sample size, but that's fair.
yeah.
Like
But
always think about
even when you
what we
flip
could
them around,
just.
like I could only see like top 5 from this viewpoint, but even when you flip them around, like almost all of them were plat plus, but almost all of
Mhm.
them were emerald when it was the other way
Yeah,
around.
Huh.
that's probably just because there's more games in. When you add all of these, like most of your games are going to come from plat. Like
Oh yeah, no, I mean
here,
like when you had the
no.
same sample selected, but you flipped it around.
Ah, that could just be like chance. Um, that is interesting. Like I think
Could
we've
be.
spoken a bit
I just
about
think
like
like higher elo
rank change.
players are more likely to
Mm,
have items on any.
yeah. So there's not that many stuff that we have that looks at rank changes, but see if I can find this comp.
Oh yeah, the top one.
And it is there at the top. Yeah, we do have this one, which kind of shows like the play rate of this comp, different ranks, and the average placement.
Oh,
So
I see.
it does get a lot more popular
Cool.
as you go high rank.
Mhm.
I think partly that's like people are just a bit more tuned in with the meta at higher ranks. Um, or they could just be like missing the comp or something.
I think what I'm already getting from the session is I don't use the games tab enough to like verify that I don't like I'm not excluding things I should be excluding, or
Mhm.
just something is weird with my query, because it looks like what you're doing every time is you tweak your query and then you jump to games just to verify that you're doing like your
Yeah,
query doesn't have any abnormalities in it, so you're not capturing some stuff you don't want to capture. So it's just a note to
yeah.
self,
I
and maybe others that don't do that, just to like use this games tab just to like sanity check yourself, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'll be honest, I don't use it as much as I should. I'm doing this because I'm like showing this in a
Demonstrating.
session.
Yeah, no, it's so
But
useful to
it's
show
definitely
that.
useful to do for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe I'm just thinking if there's anything else we could do to kind of explore this a bit more. So this is Yumi, and then not Annie. But there's a few like Samura games in here as well, which I guess you might want to exclude, and a few Neferi in here that you might want to exclude.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
So
I would
I
imagine actually
can,
excluding Neferi 3 would or Neferi 3 item, I guess in your case is what you would say,
yeah.
is probably
Um,
useful.
Obviously, this kind of skews the stats because you're like removing a lot of your item holders. But I think it could still potentially um, be useful to look at. So this one's still saying like Annie is slightly better, but it's pretty marginal. But yeah, maybe we've like excluded too much here. Um, Another example you had was at least 2 versus Aurora 1. Probably I would just do something similar. So this one you can put the star levels on because you're specifically wanting to compare.
Yeah, very specifically these exact star levels. Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I guess it would be 3 items. So this is, how would I do this? You see, if I exclude this now, I'm excluding at least 2 with 3 items, but that could still give me at least 1 with 3 items, or at least 3 with 3 items.
Could also give you no Elise on board, right? Give you like
Yeah,
a Anima Squad game. So I guess you would have to do just specify the exact number of items, I assume, like two minus on one. Is that what you would do?
um,
And three on the
yeah,
other?
yeah. That's what I would do. Yeah. So 3 items on Aurora 1 and 2 or less on Elise, that's 4.60, and then we'll just flip it. And 4.79. So that's saying Aurora's slightly better. That kind of went against your gut. And so like it's probably good to kind of dig into it a little bit. Just see.
Yeah, I guess I want to see. Yeah, I'm now looking through like the comps. I guess I think of this more in like the 4 Dynamo comp where you're playing around level 8, and so like I would think to
Yeah.
exclude things like Morgana 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Morgana 3 be my main thing to exclude to make sure I'm looking at the right comp that I want, and then
Very good. Let's go 3 items. And would you include or exclude MF carry?
I'm fine
Because
with
a lot of
MF
these games
being.
have.
Yeah, I'm fine with MF being like a variable number of items, because like some games you don't drop 80 items, some games you do.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I feel like in this comp. So now I'm curious to see how this would change. So this is
Now
saying
if
at
we
least
clear
3 item
clears
is
5.08, and then
Wait, do 2 or less
4.89.
instead of 2 for Elise.
two less. Two
Yes,
minus.
thank you.
Yeah.
So was that pretty similar? 5.07. Was it 5.09 for the last one?
Yeah, I guess it's looking similar now. Huh.
Mhm.
Interesting. I would have thought that at least is quite a bit better, but now I'm not sure. It probably depends on board state and like, 'cause I feel like Aurora just
Yeah.
spreads damage with 3 items, whereas at least can actually
Yeah.
kill stuff. But
It also probably
looking
depends what items you have. Like looking at these, like it looks like Renault Shojin. I mean, there are a few blue buffs, but
I mean, I think if you look at
if
the
you have like
games,
a
I think
blue,
there's like clearly like a lot of sampling bias, because if we just look at like our top 10 games, obviously there's some variance. But I would say on average we have like 3 legendaries per game. A lot of them we have 4. But if you flip the filters,
yeah,
there's a lot less than that. Like where you go to Elise 3 items and Aurora less than 3. Because again, like most of these are either 3 or 4 legendaries, and then like a lot of these are like a lot less.
Yeah, I think this is capturing the thing I was saying earlier, which is that these are probably games where you're sitting level. Like you'll capture a lot of the games where you sit level 7 or 8 and roll for at least 3. And then in the cases where you don't have any items on release, it's possible these are games where you try to fast 9 and you're playing around the
yeah,
5 cost more. But so it wouldn't truly capture the question of assuming in the same exact spot.
Yeah, like in
Anything
this
switch
one, literally every single board in the top 10 is level 9, whereas it was not the case the other way around.
Oh, I guess you could do a level filter, right? That would probably help capture the and make it a
yeah.
little more
Good point.
fair.
Yeah,
Well, I just
Do
think
you
like
think?
mentally, like people who put items on Elise are like trying to play like the 4 Dynamo line as like the way Mort Dog intended, whereas people who put items on Aurora are probably like fast
Some
9
fast
and
one.
like going for Aurora too, but they're probably hitting a lot of legendaries along the way, like on average.
yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how
And the
this
fact
level
they've
9
hit Aurora has some bias.
does this.
So you could have people aiming for that game plan and then not hitting.
Oh, that
This
did change.
one,
That did capture.
yeah, it
It
does
shows that.
change when you set
Yeah.
it
I
to
mean, you
level
could put
9.
in like the exact board that like people play, I guess, but it's a lot of
It probably
things.
narrows
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, it's a lot of things to put in. Either way, like just
Yeah,
eyeballing it, you can see like the Aurora one. Every single board is level 9. Most of them have 3 or even 4 legendaries, and then it was not the same the other way around.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, although I think now, I mean, now that it's confirming what I think, obviously I'm going to want to think that this is their. It's super
yeah.
biased
There
now
is
that I'm like,
such a
oh, this
thing as
captured what I thought, so
confirmation
now I
bias.
trust this
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's really
query. And then,
another
yeah,
really important thing with stats as well.
yeah, a
yeah,
bunch of confirmation bias going on here.
yeah,
I'm not convinced Aurora is like worse than Elise, like late game.
Gotcha,
Elise is
gotcha.
for sure stronger earlier, but like once players are having like 9 or 10 units on board.
Yeah, yeah. Spread AOE damage can definitely be a lot better. I think it depends on like, as long as you have other good sources of damage, I think I can see it being
Yeah,
not clear.
like Zyra
mm,
versus Seraphine, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Seraphine
yeah.
better late.
Yeah.
So just to summarize this question, I would try to construct 2 different filters. One that captures, the one board state you want to compare, and one that captures the other, and then just toggle between them. I added like bookmarks. I don't know if people use this much, but you can add bookmarks and then just like toggle between the 2. and then finally like double check the games and make sure like it all kind of lines up with what you're expecting there.
No, I haven't used that feature. I may try that out. The bookmarks. Cool.
It's kind of tucked away, but yeah, it can be useful. I know some people have like a whole bookmarks bar, like in Chrome or something, where they save all their like common queries. But this should hopefully be a little easier.
Yeah, I think I've seen Frodan do that.
Again, yeah, Frodan actually requested it, so
Oh, that makes
I'm
sense.
glad he's using it.
Okay.
The other part of the question I had in here, which I assume is not solvable, given the current API, is mid game stuff like Morgana 2 versus Elise 1. But I think this is just impossible if you are not able to expose like stage 3 stats. Item
Yeah,
yeah,
we're kind of like we gather some of this data through the app, but we're not looking to like use any of that app data, at least not anytime soon.
yeah, makes sense.
Basically, yeah, we've been like after the anomaly stat stuff where we're kind of like gathering extra data through our app. We're basically kind of steering away from anything like that. We don't want to like get in trouble again. And
Yeah.
so yeah,
Makes sense. My bad.
See, yeah, because
No
like
worries.
no, like Takasaw tools, for example, wouldn't have access to that. So I see. Yeah.
Yeah, we make use of like a little bit of it. So like these early comps here on the comps page. These I think that this kind of stuff is really useful for like newer players that don't really know a line, and so like if we use the stats in such a way that it's not like super game breaking and it helps new players, like I think Riot don't have a problem with that. But
Yeah.
if we did something that was like allowed people to like super optimize like their mid game, early game, like I think that's when like they might be like, oh, you can't use this data anymore, and so
Yeah.
like it's
And
kind
this
of
is something that's like always existed too, or like you
yeah,
guys like
this
had
is
this before, like they got rid of like the augment stats.
yeah. So this has been around for a while, and yeah, we've not had any like issues. Number of components. So yeah, so I was asking about how do you know if there's comps that like do better with like a lot of items, or comps that maybe aren't as item reliant.
Yeah, I think this became
This is a
really
really good
relevant
question.
this patch because this patch and the last, because they changed there's a really large amount of variance in how many components you drop. And like intuition tells me, and I've been changing my game plan to like decide to steer away or towards comps when you have many or few items in a game. And just curious how, if there's any way stats can help sort of guide this type of thinking.
Yeah. So in the current form, no, it's kind of like tricky to get an answer to that. But it's something that like this question actually got me thinking, and so like I think I want to add either a number of items filter or some sort of like graph that can kind of break this down. Let me go back to the whiteboard. I think it's the way to. So what you kind of get in a game, like as the game goes on, actually, this one, let's have average placement here. And this is your number of items. And what you'll find is like, if you don't have any items, you're basically 8th. And then at some point, I think it's around like, what's the average number of items in the game now? Like 8 or something.
That's way more than components. Oh, full items.
Complete items, yeah.
It's probably pretty close to 8.
At some point, yeah, you'll get like, let's say it's around there. At some point, you'll suddenly see like a massive drop with like an increasing number of items. So as you go from like 8 items to 9 items, like that means you've got past the mid game and you're into the late game. And so
like
you'll
the
see some
5/5
sort of
carousel,
relationship.
basically.
Yeah, you'll see in it some sort of relationship like this. And what I'm wondering is, if you look at the Vanguard line, if maybe it looks something like this, if that makes sense. Like you have a worse average placement with fewer items, but like once you get to the more items, you're actually better than the average.
Yeah.
And so I'd expect
That's
like
what I would
a
imagine.
comp with a high item reliance to kind of look like this, and then maybe a comp that like doesn't care so much about items would be like this.
Like Anima Squad or something, yeah.
Mhm. So this is a piece of analysis I want to do. And maybe it's just adding filters like for a number of items, or maybe it's like a little graph like this. But it's definitely interesting to kind of think about. And then maybe it's something we could add to the comms page, like a little tag here that's like, oh, this needs a lot of items, or
Yeah, I could see it being useful for sure. Although I did hear that they're reducing some variance around total number of drops in the next patch. But nonetheless, I think it could still be extremely useful to help sort of guide your thinking on what comp to angle when you start the game and you have one item and no one component and no item augment. Like, oh, just to know that
yeah.
for like, yeah, some comp is just really bad if you have really low items. The most common examples now, I think, being like reroll, like the Mundo's airline or stuff like that, where you need a bunch of items ideally early.
Mhm. Yeah, so I don't have a good answer for this at the moment. So sorry.
No
But
worries,
I
bro. I
think
think
it's
the
something
analogy you're
we could
drawing
potentially do something with to find out.
will be avidly awaiting such a feature if if you end up having the time to make that.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Is there a way to quickly find the best emblem or item holders, or emblem holders in specific comps? Say yes, that one I can answer. You specifically mentioned Dynamo Vex, right?
Yes. So when playing like a Vex Varus, which is
This
like the
Vex Varus.
yeah, that one. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't realize. I guess there are times where I don't realize certain elements are actually super strong in given lines, and just like it really
Mhm.
helps when you see an emblem or pan on like early game carousels to know, like to have it really top of mind to know like, oh, certain comps are really good with X emblems. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So if you know, or you can look at, so yeah, to start you can kind of look at this tab. So I've opened up the options on the comms page and gone to custom, and these are like kind of like +1 traits. And so this interface is kind of
Oh,
designed around
We're seeing that before,
helping
yeah.
you find cap outs. So if you clicked the +1 dynamo,
yeah.
actually it puts it on Sejuani here, but we can look at the stats and see if that's correct or not.
I didn't know this
But yeah, so this,
tab existed. Okay, so it's options, quick start, custom, and then that shows
yeah, custom,
+1.
and
Gotcha.
so you can see the stats of all the like +1s here, and so that will kind of give you the board that you want to aim for, or different options for boards that you want to aim for.
Always on Sejuani.
Interesting. That's like
So
it was. I thought that it was
the
better
logic.
on Paris, but I mean, maybe this is showing that it actually is.
So the other thing you can check, I've switched to the unit and items tab, and
Yeah,
I'm just going to look up what
3.9.
the stats are for Dynamo Emblem.
Yeah.
So it's more common on Varus, and it also looks like it has a better average place. So I'd have to double check why it's putting it on Sejuani there.
Gotcha. So the options quick start can just see what emblems are, and then if you want to look at the specific unit, you can use this units and items tab for now.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Cool.
that's the quickest way to do it in the
Do,
comps tab. You
do
could
you
also
think
do that in Explorer.
do you think the reason it's putting on Sejuani is because even though if you go to the customs, the first thing we're looking at with the Dynamo +1, so even though all of these comps have Varus, do you think because like when you're really capped out, a lot of times you drop Varus? Do you think that's kind of reflected in putting it on Sejuani, or like the best performing comps don't even have Varus, though they have the Dynamo on someone
That
else?
could impact the stats. the logic for this view, it just kind of tries to get the best holders just on an overall for the whole comp. But it should reflect what's shown in this tab.
Okay.
So I'd have to double check. But if you want like a really precise answer, again, you can kind
Yeah.
of use the Explorer.
I think that'd be a really
Wait, do you have the
small
thing?
that'd be a really small sample because I think I mean it'd be very rare to draw Varus, but I think like if you had an infinite gold, I guess you would.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it'd be like super rare.
I would imagine like if you're truly just looking at like highest, although I guess the units and items page tends to seems to contradict that that Sejuani's better, but you could imagine that getting a third real item on Varus could be more impactful and moving that onto moving this emblem onto Sedge
Mhm.
than getting a third tank item and leaving the Dynamo emblem on
Yeah.
Varus.
I mean,
As
the
a true
Dynamo
cut.
is like almost a full item on Varus, but I think it's like a lot worse on Sejuani.
Yeah,
It's pretty, yeah.
because she doesn't use the damage at all, right? Basically, I mean barely, I guess.
So this is how I'd look for the best emblem holders. Is just add the like kind of spell out. I've done the bare minimum for the Vex comp here. Add the emblem, and then if you go to the items tab, you can change the item holder to any unit, and then the item to any of the ones you put into the filters. And then this just gives you, like, it seems like most people are putting it on Vex. Maybe that's some bias from the filter setup. But Varus has the best stats, but Sejuani is also a good option.
Well,
I
Sejuani
guess
guess
has
under
Emblem as
the
well.
best average
accuracy
placement,
for
which is what I was saying, where I think it's like
Mm.
Varus. There's some boards like you drop your Varus, and then those probably have like really high average placement.
Yeah, it's probably going off average placement on the comps tab, but the delta is better for Varus because
Yeah.
it's got higher.
Yeah. So I
Right.
think it's probably like what I said before, would be my guess. It also might be counting some like non-exotech boards as this. Like if you're playing like 7 Divinity Core with like
Yeah.
Sejuani, Urgot, uh Renekton.
Yeah, and there's no one else to put the Dynamo emblem on that's impactful, I guess, potentially.
It's like these all have Varus pretty much, like almost every single one.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think the answer of just there's a tab on the comps page that shows it is
Yeah,
really
that's really
good
cool.
because
I didn't know
there are
about
many
that.
comps where
The
you
plus
get like we get +1s randomly, like playing I don't know Mundo, the Mundo Zara comp. I don't know if Bruiser or Techie is better in that comp.
would we also be able to do it the other way around? Like what's the best
Comp to play when
+1
you have
Yeah,
on 2-1?
that's a good one. So if I'm looking at 2-1
Wait, let's look at this Mundo Techie one to show right here
emblem
first.
stats.
Okay, never mind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
we'll
kind
do
of curious.
that.
I guess we can always look it up eventually, but yeah,
Sorry, yeah.
if
I
we're,
like
if
derailed
we're already here, I'm down.
Marcel's question.
I'm curious. I'm curious as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
The
with plus
Techie's
one
a bit
techie,
better.
you can see like
I like Techie.
Yeah.
Quite a
and
bit.
then it gives you
0.17. I guess his comp kind of lacks damage eventually,
I just
unless
think
you get to like
the Techie spat is a lot better. I actually literally just played with Bruiser spat. It's pretty dead late game. I guess late game you can put on Viego, but Techie like Alistair is like pretty valuable.
yeah techie alley and then swap it to Kabuko when you get him.
Yeah, and the Bruiser can give like your off carry like a very small amount of damage, but it's pretty irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to use belt as well, like if you're trying to make more mogs or any belt item on Mundo.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're looking at like 2-1, you get a random emblem, or you get a choice of emblems.
Yeah.
You can kind of just look at like overall placement. If you've
Okay.
got no direction, I think that's fine.
I see.
And let's look at Divinity Corp because that's probably the most flex. This is holders. So I guess another way to look at that would just be like if we look at the Explorer. So probably the first thing I'd do is choose the emblem with the best average placement if I had a choice. Sometimes you just get offered one. Do you have like an emblem in mind that would be interesting?
Dynamo.
I think
I think it's
Anima.
Well, we just covered Dynamo.
I think Anima is pretty interesting because it had the best average placement out of every emblem when we looked at it, but I think if you put in, this might have changed, but I remember putting in 7 Anima and having the Anima emblem doesn't actually help this comp as much as like if you have 7 Street Demon and you have the Street Demon emblem, for example. So I thought that was kind of surprising. I guess it's just because the Anima Squad comp is better to begin with. Okay, never mind. That's actually pretty straightforward.
So one thing you could do is let's put Anima Squad only. This crew is limited to because it can be quite a slow one, so adding a few filters actually helps it. So here we're on 8, we could look at 9. And this should just give you like the best boards to play if you have an emblem. Interesting, there's marksman up there as well.
Oh, huh. A lot of these are. Not a lot, but there are a few 5 Anima marksmans.
Yeah, you can kind of scan through these and get an idea of what endgame boards you want to play with a specific emblem as well. That's another way to do it. That's not just the comps page. If we do that, like you could look at 7 or more Anima Squad. I'm just seeing if
will this capture like the Garen encounter where you start with it won't, right?
So +1 traits actually looks at not just emblems on units, but it also looks at like emblems on golems and training dummies
You'll
and
see
stuff.
it. Okay.
Oh, it does. It does.
Yeah,
I think
the reason we do that.
Yeah, I think that's something like Tools doesn't cover, which I mean, I've been using Tools primarily just because I'm more familiar with it. But I think that's something like they don't cover.
Yeah, it's also a good site. This +1 trait, it's like a relatively new concept that we've kind of put together, which just looks at like the end game boards and compares like the traits from your units to the traits that you actually ended on the end game screen. Sense. And so we can kind of work out, even though we don't get the golems from the end game screen or the training dummies or things like that, you can kind of piece together what extra emblems there were.
I actually didn't know this +1 trade thing all existed as well. This is useful, quite useful as well. I guess it's just similar to the comps page, but you can have your own query as opposed to just being stuck with.
Oh, I think this is where my question was. Emma Squad, the comp itself, is it? So when you're playing 7 Emma Squad and you have +1 Emma Squad, it actually makes your average placement get worse. But it's still the best performing emblem. Is it just because the comp is that good? That can't be the case, right? I'm a little confused about that.
Okay, so I think probably the reason it's the best performing emblem is because it enables you to hit 10 Anima Squad.
Yeah, I assume that's why.
Oh, even if you, so you have it locked to level 7, but if you do 7+, is it still? Oh, I see. So you have exactly
Like,
+1 Anima. It's not very good.
That's what I was looking at, 7 or more.
Right,
So
I see.
if we put 7 or more Anima Squad, +1 Anima Squad has quite a bad
Yeah, that makes sense.
change. But then if you get +2, like it suddenly it gets way better.
I see.
I think I saw +3 as well.
Oh, yeah, of course, because you only need 2. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How about just Anima Squad Emblem though? I think I'm still a little bit confused why Anima Squad Emblem.
Like you're looking at the
with
page
7 with 7 or more Anima.
Oh,
That's okay. Anima Squad Emblem.
Basically, assuming you have 7 or more anima, like how does Anima Squad Emblem perform?
I assume it would be good, and it's carried by the or more, right? In
Okay,
that
so it's
filter.
yeah, it is good.
Yeah.
But I
And
assume it's
then
just carried by the or more. Yeah.
if you
Yeah, and then
fixed
if
it
you
to 7, yeah.
yeah, then it's not as
Okay, I
good.
see. That makes sense.
Yeah. So would that impact like you choosing Anima Squad Emblem? Like probably you'd probably only pick it if you already had a +1.
I guess what is the best emblem? I'm curious. I would assume actually I don't know. Dynamo?
Wouldn't it still be Anima Squad on 2-1, like if you have absolutely nothing?
Oh, on two
Yeah, I
one,
think
yes.
so.
But I guess if you're like on like end game, I guess you don't really have to end game carousel if you had a choice, I guess. It probably would differ as well based on your board state, but I'm just curious like what the actual best emblem is if you're guaranteed not 10 anima. But
So I guess I don't know if people use the no filters thing, but that
Oh
basically
wow.
just gives you
Okay.
like overall stats.
Yeah.
oh,
So
I didn't know that.
if you want to like just browse stats with no filters, then you could look at all these like +1 traits and just see like,
Yeah, what
oh,
the
what's
best
the
ones are
actual
for now.
like best +1. We just fix it to just +1.
And it is
Some of these are like API
+25.
issues. Yeah.
Oh,
Sometimes the data we get is a little messy.
Vanguard is surprising to me. Maybe that's just chassis moored, but
Well, I think
I
Vanguard
would
makes
deny
infinite sense. It's the only 1 out of 17 that's not craftable. So it implies like because the rest of these you can
Oh,
just
trait
build out
tracker.
spats, but this
It's
one's
trait
like
tracker.
you're
Yeah,
getting it
yeah,
off carousels a lot as well, like
yeah.
relative
Okay,
to the other ones.
Yeah.
yeah, you can't build it.
These could also come from training dummies or golems and stuff as well, so bear that in mind.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't know if that answers any questions, but maybe it's another tool you could potentially use.
No, yeah, I think everything we covered here
What
is very
nitro?
effective.
Yeah,
I wonder how
so
that.
obviously this is,
Yeah,
I mean, again, we can just look at it and see like what happened. Apparently these boards had +1 nitron.
yeah. Looks like it's just a bug, maybe.
Yeah, I think maybe sometimes if someone like sells their board last minute or like there's
Okay.
a lot of like random other places here, or if someone disconnects, maybe like
Yeah.
the
Oh,
API doesn't update
really
correctly.
big board states. Yeah, some of these are eighths that are yeah, the board makes no sense. They DC'd or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay.
Okay. Uh, I think we kind of covered that. I hate to prioritize first
Yeah,
in the line.
that one is kind of similar to
I
the
think,
first question, I guess. The
yeah.
who's better? I guess it's sort of mixed with the second question here, where like assuming you get to all of them itemized, then it's I guess the question is less important. But this is more so like who is ideally itemized first. But I think that
Mhm.
it ties into the second question, which is that we can't answer because it's like stage specific sort of
Yeah.
information.
Maybe if I did add like a number of items filter, you could kind of like set the number of items, so then that would be like a fair comparison between one carry versus another. Like
That's
if you
true.
only
Yeah,
had
if you said
8
six
complete
full items,
items, well,
yeah,
yeah.
makes sense.
Okay. We got Ace's question about sampling bias. I don't know if you want to ask this now,
Yeah,
or should I just summarize
basically,
it?
I guess so. Even when you use like the Advanced Explorer, I find that you still have to do like a lot of the things that you would have to do anyway. Like for example, when we looked at Annie right at the start, and like 2x voice staff is at the top. Basically, like even with the Advanced Explorer, you still have to do a lot of the things you would have to do anyway. Uh, so I tend to just think the regular tier list is really good. I think it's
Mm.
yeah, like as I mentioned, it just matches super close to what like conventional what like Disto, Sesco, etc. Like what pretty much everyone agrees on. So I always just recommend people to use that. I guess like what are your thoughts on that, and maybe like more insight on how the tier list is made.
Mhm. Yeah. So
Yeah, like
the
these are
tier list
basically
here.
just Misfortune's best items, pretty much.
Yeah. So this tier algorithm is basically a mix between post change and frequency. I think on this one, I think if you wanted to get what the top NA players thought was the best, you could probably just look at like, let's say Grandmaster Plus and then sort by frequency. Um, like because that's what people are making most often in high elo.
Wouldn't that
Like,
really bias against, like, I think, for example, most people would think Deathblade is up here, but it's just really hard to build because it's a double item.
yeah, yeah, that would bias against things like Deathblade. So obviously with frequency, yeah, there's a part of that is like how easy it is to make, and then the other part is like, is it actually a good item? Like a lot of people build Shojin on Misfortune, but it stats so that it isn't very good. And so that's why I think like a mixed approach between frequency and average placement works quite well.
So
Let
I've done
me.
this in the past, but I'm curious how you would do this and how much you think the impact. Is there a way to like quantify the impact? Because I think Shojin, if you make it like really end game, a lot of times you're gonna move to Aurora. I don't know like
Mhm.
how big of an impact that would make, or if it's like pretty negligible.
Yeah, maybe like people that have built Shojin, they ideally don't want to end with Shojin, but it's like a mid game item. And then if they could get eliminated. Yeah. Like that's one of those things that is like survivorship bias at its core. Like
Yeah,
it's almost impossible to correct for that
I
without,
see. Okay,
looking
that
at
makes
round by
sense.
round data.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to show you this quickly. I don't know if people use like the graph view very
I love
often.
this graph. I haven't looked at it in a long
Um,
time.
Oh, I've never used this.
I used to use this all the
but
time, but I haven't used it recently.
basically what you get is that you have average placement down here. So stuff on the left has the best, lowest average placement. And then frequency is on the y-axis, so that Infinity Edge is the most common item.
Mhm.
Um, what you see is there's like a relationship between frequency and average placement, where the lower frequency items have the best average placement. And that's because these items aren't built as often. They're more likely to come from carousel. The reason I like looking at this is because it's really hard to compare Infinity Edge to something like Stoic Gaze or Edge and Light. Like, they're probably both good items, but because of survivorship bias, it's really hard to compare. What you
Mhm.
can compare between is something like Infinity Edge and Gargoyle's Stoneplate. Like, Infinity Edge, it has a better average placement and it has a higher play rate. So that means it must be better than something like Shojin or Gargoyle's Stoneplate.
Mhm.
And so you can kind of like anything up on this like top left corner, that's going to be like OP items. And then anything in the bottom right, we've got like pattern emblems down there for some reason. But anything down here, like Declaw, Nash's Teeth, Rageblade, they're probably underperforming a little bit.
Gotcha.
Part of that might be because like their item holders aren't very good. Part of it might just be the items aren't very good. But like when you then compare that to the tier list, we tried to kind of account for that relationship. So you see Thieves Gloves, Infinity Edge, Warmogs. They're not the best average placement, but because of their position in this graph, they've got the highest tiers
Yeah.
because they've got that good relationship between frequency and average placement. So
I
Um,
need to
the
use
tier algorithm tries to capture that.
what I used to do
Go
is
on.
like draw a straight line, a diagonal like through the middle, and think
Yeah.
like the items like above the line are better than items below the line, kind of. Should that line be straight or should it be curved?
Good question. Honest answer, I don't know. I think straight is
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, you probably want something that maybe you could draw multiple lines. They're all kind of like parallel and like have an S tier section and then an A tier section and then a B tier section.
Remox looks really good.
I
Wow.
don't think like I'd love if like somebody did a university project and like really broke this down and like just spent, like a year like figuring out survivorship bias and I think that could be a really interesting project.
I see.
But I've not like invested the time in like really kind of like figuring out all those correlations.
I
One
like this
thing. Sorry, go ahead.
top players have been saying, which I didn't realize with matches so closely, is that Nasher, Declaw, and Sunfire being like really suboptimal items, and these three are like very much Declaw being really bad because most AP units that don't like facing Declaw don't really have to get through your front line. Things like Morgana, or like if you're facing a Brand or an Aurora or an Elise, the only AP unit that really gets truly like blocked by Declaw maybe is Vex, but Vex is true damage, so it also kind of isn't that good versus Vex. So but yeah, it's just cool to see like opinions being reflected in this visual, which I didn't know existed.
Can we look at last patch for a second?
Yeah, hopefully I should still have a bit of data.
Sterax drops below a lot, right? Below the line. Sterax probably it has such a big jump.
Yeah, I see. I guess Rapid Fire
Yeah.
dropped a lot. I was mainly interested in Rapid Fire, so I guess it's just a lot worse this patch. I haven't played as much on this patch, but I know like Rapid Fire was considered like the premier emblem, kind of.
Yeah.
But on current patch, it seems like it dropped a lot.
Yeah, even Shroud got a lot better on the current patch, I think.
There's no way to make this comp specific, is there? Like to see a graph like this, but specifically with 7 Anima Squad or something like that?
So I want to add this to the Explorer. I do think it's a bit underutilized though. Like I don't know how many people would actually like people like tables, and so like I've kind of like built tables into the website everywhere. But the closest you could do is actually look at it does exist on the unit page, so you can kind of get an idea on a unit specific basis. It's not quite a comp specific, but I guess you might be looking at like Zaya. You can get her. Did that update? I think so. It's just very similar items to
Gotcha.
Misfortune.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually really helpful. I think that gets like a good amount of the way there. Yeah.
So this would be, you definitely want Infinity Edge, ideally Guardbreaker or Striker's Flail, and then one of these two, and that's kind of reflected in this like top items here.
Yeah. Cool.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know there were so many features on this site.
Yeah, same.
Well, I've spent 5 years like adding to it like every day. So I think one of the feedback we get is there's a bit too much to it, which is fair. Like it's kind of there's a balance between adding all these features and then also like making it usable. But yeah, there's lots of little tips that you're maybe not going to use every day, but like every now and then you can dig into the data a little bit more. But yeah, that one's really tucked away.
I will say that it's not very obtrusive at all, like all these features, and like that leads to them being missed, but also it means that the interface is pretty clean, and I think makes talks like this really nice because it gives us a way to kind of like use all that you've put in and all that there's to offer.
One thing that
it's really hard to balance. Go on, Asa.
Can you click stats under Zaya's portrait? I think One thing that like tactics.tools have that I really like is if you click ability, it tells you like the scaling. Like if you gain like for
In the
example, if you
toolkit.
gain
Yeah.
AP, like how much AD, like oh yeah,
Yeah.
especially for like mixed scaling
Yeah.
units.
Yeah. That right kind of like switched from like an old tooltip to a new tooltip, and we're kind of still on the old tooltip, which
See.
doesn't have as many of the calculations.
Oh, gotcha.
So yeah, I can try and prioritize that and update it, because it is useful to see, this unit has really good AD scaling and like 0.1 AP scaling or something. Like that is useful information.
I will say that like when the new set launched, I think I would be like fully on board as like a MetaTFT user. But that is like one of the big things that keeps me going back to tactics.tools when a new set drops, because I feel like knowing the scalings is quite important.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, noted. I'll literally write it down now. Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Asa.
Yeah.
Um,
So
about
it's
bias.
only like the average placement and frequency. That's it. Nothing like you only use those two. That seems like
That's
it
it,
makes
yeah.
sense that that would be like all you need, but I'm kind of surprised. It's so simple, but it makes sense
Mhm.
after you say it.
Yeah, I think if I wanted to improve the algorithm a bit, it would be take into account like how often that unit has items, and like maybe just looking at 3-item builds and comparing them or something like that. But I think like this one is, they're all like C tier because they're all like tiny sample size. But realistically, maybe one of them should be S or A tier.
That
So I think
top one
there's
should
still
be F tier. It's a 600
It's
cash out.
the cash out. Yeah, I'm at
yeah.
the top four of
It
that.
only averages 3.08. That's actually so depressing. It actually averages worse than like just regular
With
item
all the other
builds.
builds.
Like you think if you get a 600 Cypher cash out, you
Yeah.
should win the game. I have gone 8th with that one as well.
Okay. Questions from Cucumbersome. Have you noticed precursors in the stats for comps which went on to become meta? What would you be looking for if you're trying to find the next untapped line? For this one, I think stats are great at like showing like what people are doing. It's not great at picking up like some line that somebody's like managed to optimize. Like individual people are a lot better at finding unoptimized lines and optimizing them, and then those then go on to become meta. Normally our comps algorithm will pick up comps quite quickly if there is like a new one. I think at the moment there's like a Graves comp that is
Yeah,
picking up,
this is a
like
combat to become
improving a
on
lot.
actually. Yeah.
Actually, I was looking at Masterclass and actually it's like not doing very well. Like 4.74. Interestingly, just looking at that at Grandmaster Plus, it's actually like performing really well. So one way to kind of pick up new comps is just looking at the comps page and looking out for these like improving or like trending comps. There's another symbol. That's not going to happen like every day. So another way I'd kind of recommend is there's the One Tricks page. That's actually
Just
like
about
a
that.
Patreon supporter feature. But you can see people that are kind of like forcing one line and really optimizing that and seeing how they're doing. I'll actually show you a little trick that you can kind of get similar stuff without paying. So this is the leaderboard page. And one of the filters here you can do is like how flex a player is.
My god, that's so cool.
So you can look at people like the top ranked players which have like a low flexibility score. We could do like a bit lower. You can kind of look through these and see
Where's
like the
LP?
most played units as well.
Uh-oh.
Alright, low flex.
Low
God.
flexibility.
This guy Dynamo every game.
100%.
I was spamming a lot of Dynamo on main and Vest.
Oh, and
love
Amp,
that.
yeah.
And
Basically, flexibility is it's how likely you are to play the
I'm in the
same
middle
units
there.
every game. So if you play like comps with like a lot of overlap, or it just looks at like 1k into the next game.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I noticed you don't play like any like brand lines at all. Either
Oh,
either
yeah, I
either the
basically never
reroll
played
version
that.
or like the street demon.
I've been playing on a Smurf lately, and I've been trying to play the Zyra board more, but I basically never play that.
No, I mean that
board.
board is
I don't
not
know.
that good, so it makes sense. It's like okay, but it's like you're playing the good boards basically. I actually, one comment you made earlier about individuals finding it, I actually think it's completely the other way around. I think like data is way better at finding comps, and a lot of the times it's just like individuals find it from data.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both. I think sometimes people can, use a lot of data to optimize a line that wasn't optimized before. And suddenly that takes the average placement up like a place, and it's suddenly like a broken comp.
Yeah.
But
I
because
guess like
people aren't playing it that optimized, it's not going to appear in the stats as a broken comp because it's just one or two people that have figured it out.
I think well that's what I'm saying. I think it does appear in the stats because I think like using this set as an example, I think there's been two. This actually doesn't even happen that often. The fact we've had two already is a lot, but with Bastion Morgana coming up like halfway through a patch, as well as Vexotech earlier, these were both
Yeah.
comps that like came up halfway through a patch, which is pretty rare. Like I think it's you normally don't have two by this time in the set. I think a lot of those came up because the top players are like looking at the stats for those comps and like it's doing well, so they start playing it.
Yeah, but somebody had to figure out that line before it appeared in the stats.
Oh really? Okay, I see.
I think
it's like early in a patch cycle, I would trust individuals more, and then later in a patch cycle, I would trust the data more. Is how I would think about it. But
yeah, I think what happens is you get a few individuals optimize a line, then it kind of like spreads out, like people see it in their games, or
Okay, I see.
someone writes a guide on it, and then it gets reflected early in the stats, and then that's when kind of like it hits kind of the mainstream once it gets reflected on the stat sites. Because then people that like maybe aren't as in tune or aren't watching guides every day, but they are checking the stats, like they'll start to see it. And so I think where lines originate first is like individual players that like go out and like optimize. So this is like a Korean player that I've just picked, and like he's playing a lot of Marksman Vanguard and doing quite well, just basically forcing it. It's not a new line, but sometimes when you look at these leaderboards and you put like the forcer on, you'll kind of see interesting, like maybe this modern Varus reroll could be. Yeah, this guy's playing a lot of like modern Varus. I mean, it seems like Vex as well.
yeah,
just Vex.
It seems mostly Vex, yeah.
yeah, he's Vex he played with not Hyperfang, Cyber, and Hollow Bow. Oh, he's just getting it every game. Interesting. He's actually he's just getting Hyperfang and Hollow Bow every game somehow.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't play it if he doesn't have those, because like he does have a few games where he doesn't play it. So as well, I guess if he has Hyperfangs or Hollow Bows, no, he just plays the line no matter what.
Yeah. Oh, he has Flux in one of the games. He took a second actually. Flux on Varus.
Yeah.
Which is I think it's the worst one in the data.
Yeah. Yeah, I would to discover people that are actually, innovating, you can look at forces and just see what they're playing. If you want even more sample size, you just flick through. Like global just looks at the top 1,000 players globally, but you can like really start digging into it by like looking at each region in turn.
You mentioned
And that
innovating,
would
but
be-
I know like the NA players, like these. I know a lot of these players. I think they just play. I mean, if you look on the right, I think they're just playing like a known comp. Is there a way to see if someone's like playing like a unknown comp? Like these are just all like either AMP or Dynamo players for the most part.
yeah, I don't think so.
I guess I
You
recognize
could look
like
at the One
5 of
Tricks
them at the
page.
top.
Yeah, you could look at the One Tricks page if you're a patron and kind of dig through that.
Okay, I see.
This isn't like as easy to use, but
I
I'm
see.
just showing this as like
Yeah.
another technique.
Is that one
There's
player
no
with
real
a
way to kind of like pick out comps that are, you know, like innovative or new comps other than just looking through this playstyle column
Yeah.
and just seeing if you see like this could be interesting.
Fine
Like
Conwa. Yeah.
Hawkeye,
I mean that's a
like
known comp now, but
it's relatively new. Yeah, it's new, but
yeah.
sorry, it is known, but yeah, interesting
So
to
what does
see
it
someone doing like
mean if
reasonably
it's an
well with it.
empty cell under the rightmost thing? If it's like, yeah, if you're forcing but it's empty, what would that
You're
mean?
forcing AP. Is that what that is?
If it's forcing but you're empty, it could just mean you're actually playing like a little bit flex, but you just happen to have like repeated some of the same units. Like this looks fairly flex to me, but like there's a lot of Mondays, there's a lot of like Morganas. So
Oh,
it may
gotcha.
just be that this guy happened to play the same comps in consecutive games, but wasn't just forcing one comp. So yeah,
Gotcha.
it's just a measure of how often you repeat units. So it's not a perfect like score for finding one tricks. The one tricks algorithm is a bit better at that, but
If you
it gives
alternate,
you an idea of
like let's say you play the same comp like like let's say you only play 2 different comps and you play every
yeah.
other game for 20 games, or you do like 10 in a row then 10 in a row. Would it show like a different score?
Yes. So if you alternated, the comp would say that the score would be like you're the most flex player
I see.
like ever.
Okay.
And then if you did 10
Oh,
then 10, it'd be like you're super low flex.
I see. So
Yeah.
consecutive actually factors in.
Yeah. It was just like the easiest score I could calculate
Right,
that
yeah,
would
that
give
makes sense.
something kind of meaningful.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
it's easy to understand as well. Like I can explain it to you and kind of get it.
It is the free feature, so if you want more, you gotta gotta pay up.
Yeah. But that could be a useful way to kind of, if you really kept digging for a while, you might be able to find some interesting lines in here.
Yeah.
Okay. What are my thoughts on the removal of augment stats? I try not to, like, obviously I'm biased because like augment stats were a big part of the site. And it was kind of sad to see that go. I think personally as well, like I'm a very like data driven person, and so I enjoy digging into the stats and kind of using that to help me. Like I'm somebody that doesn't get as much time to play, and so like discovering all the augments like interactions and how strong they are for myself is like really tricky. So I liked having stats that I could like kind of fall back on and help me like perform at a good level, even if I wasn't like able to play as much. So personally for me, I think it's a negative, but I also think that the TFT team, or I'd hope that they're like measuring like how it's impacted, you know, player numbers and like how much people are enjoying the game. Because at the end of the day, like if TFT does better, like we do better as a site, and so if it's healthy for TFT, I'm actually like all for it. Like personally, it kind of goes like I liked playing with stats, but that's just a personal preference. I think if it's good for TFT, then it's good. Like I back it. So I just hope that they're able to like measure like how well it's done, and they seem to say that it is like good and healthy for the game. But I don't know if that is subjective or objective, if they've actually got numbers or if they've like that's kind of like how they feel. And to an extent, we should also trust how they feel. Like they've done a good job with like designing TFT as it is, and it's a very successful game. And so like even if it is just a subjective opinion that it's better for the game, then maybe we should just trust that.
I think it'd be really hard for them to like separate the data for augment stats because that was during set 13, the arcane set. So I think it's like a decent bit more popular than set 12 already. So I'm not even sure how they would attribute that to the removal of augment stats.
Yeah, how much is less augment stats and how much is set design, and how much is arcane. I think it's really tricky to kind of like tell, like, was it a good change or was it not? So yeah, it probably is tricky. But again, I'm biased, so probably disregard my opinion. I'll try to be unbiased throughout it, though. What are some of your favorite underutilized tools in queries? I think I've covered a lot of those in this session, like things like the graphs, things like some of the Explorer ones. I'll do one that comes to mind.
Bookmarks.
Yeah, bookmarks. If you're an app user, I'll show you something. Oh, 3-star brand. Let's do 3-item brand. One thing I like to do, if it's like a really specific line, actually, let me think about, I had quite a specific one the other day where I had to like Shaco with, what's the augment that gives him infinite range?
With weapons.
Yeah, scope weapons.
Scope weapons, yeah. So obviously we can't get scope weapon stats, but you can kind of assume that if someone's putting a Ginsu's on him, that's probably scope weapons.
Yeah, with high likelihood.
And then I quite like looking at this like comps, like see what the top comps are. This one's like not particularly surprising, but there's maybe other comps like you might want to kind of like look in and see what your best options are here, like through the Explorer. But then one thing you can do in the app is click this like open to team builder. And if you're in the app, there's a button that's like pin in game. And there's also a toggle to like turn on shop notifications. So instead of like loading this whole comp into your in-game team planner, if you use the app team planner, like this will automatically pull in those shop notifications for you. So it's a bit quicker than having to like kind of like manage the team planner in game.
Wait, it puts it in your in-game team planner, or?
No, it doesn't put it in your in-game team planner, but it basically does the same job. If you have units in the team builder in the app,
I see. Okay.
It will give you the notifications as well. So you can either use the in-game one or the MetaTFT app one. It basically does the same thing, but it's a bit quicker. You can do it from this view as well. Like we saw this custom tab. You can just click this like import to team builder, and it'll pull in the notifications for you as well. So that's an app feature, but I think it's still quite a useful one. I think particularly for, like you say, an average student, like you're probably a good player, but like it can be helpful for newer players to get those notifications as well. I mean, it's helpful for everyone, but. How do you search for which units best cap a certain comp? I think I've showed that as well, like looking at the boards page, the comps tab in here.
There's one comp I'd actually am really curious about. If we want to use that as an example. It's for Dynamo, Gragas, Kobiko.
Okay. Is this are these item holders as well? Or
yeah, and then also with Renekton.
This is the Poppy Renekton.
Yeah, so
board, right?
I think there's been some debate whether you should play Poppy or Sejuani for Bastion here. So I'm wondering, like,
For
is
this
this something you
online
can
specifically.
determine? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's Poppy
So
versus Sejuani specifically, I guess. So Poppy obviously gives your Koboko 20% HP. Sejuani obviously is a much better unit.
yeah. Say another quick trick. If you want to exclude any boards with a +1 trait, you can do this. And
Oh, I
this
didn't know
gets
that.
rid of
Oh,
all the
I
plus
didn't know
ones.
there was any +1. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So these like generic ones, like any radiant item, any artifact, they're quite useful if you just want to exclude
Oh,
like any boards with an artifact item or like any +1s here, and just look at
well, that's super
your
useful.
cap outs. So it looks like your best board does have Poppy on it, but it's kind of spread out. Like there's a Sejuani there. There's Poppy, there's Sejuani. So you can look at individual boards, which I think is useful. Obviously, be careful of sample size.
Yeah, the sample size for the
but
Sejuani
actually,
is so much lower.
Yeah,
Would
but that
the
kind of
units
indicates that.
be a fair way
Yeah,
to
the
do
units tab is also a good one. Again, on this one, you might want to set like you might want to specify level 9. You can see Poppy here and then Sejuani down here. Poppy with
That's
a much
crazy.
higher play rate
That is
and like being a 1 cost as well. Obviously, they've helped a bit with the bias on by setting level 9, but
Like intuitively
it's
to me, Sejuani like just has to be better, but I'm I'm not sure. I guess.
could do the games
Assuming
and
that Sedge is not casting. This just depends. If it's 2-star, would that change it? Maybe because it's possible this is just like Sedge 1 versus Poppy 1, right? Because usually this is like the last thing you're even like considering to upgrade. Is this last unit?
so you can toggle
It
the
also
unit.
maybe matters if you have Kobuko 2 or not.
Yeah, Poppy is still better even
Yeah.
at 2-star.
Damn.
We could put Kabuki to
Yeah, I mean
We'll
that
go
should
to
make
it.
Poppy look
That
even
would-
more better, right?
Poppy.
yeah.
I think like this doesn't make sense to me because like I feel like Sejuani has to be better. Like
If you put Kabuko 1, does it? Because I think if it's possible that people
yeah, I mean maybe Poppy just is
Okay.
better.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean
just better, but
it's possible.
I think I can believe that
is
people
this Kabuki your item holder as
Yeah,
well?
Poppy should be way better if Kobuko has items.
Yeah.
Is it not also possible that people only opt to put Poppy when they have an upgraded or like an impactful Kabuko? And when you do have an impactful Kabuko, you know your placement is going to be good. And when
I
it's
see.
like if you assume that people are doing the right thing, right, to not play the Poppy. When
Yeah,
you
but they're
don't-
just always playing the Poppy for the frequency.
yeah, based on the frequency,
Mine-
I think they are. So
Okay, interesting. How much of the data bias do you think it could be that like what elo range are we using right now? Emerald Plus. How much of the
Emerald
data
Plus,
bias
it's
do you
good
think that
fun.
like the high elo players are playing the Poppy since they just like memorize that as a comp?
Yeah, it could be. So we've adjusted it, but again, with the adjustments, like
Yeah. Okay. So I guess
It's
this is one where I know a lot of players say the comp is supposed to have Poppy, but intuitively to me, I just believe Sejuani must be better if you don't have like a 2-star itemized Kobuko. But maybe I might just be wrong, but I'm not sure. It might just be like the high elo players who like know about the comp are dragging it up as well.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Like I said, like there is a certain amount that people can optimize that before it gets reflected in the stats, like on an individual level. So stats aren't everything. Like if your gut is saying that Sejuani has to be better, like there's a good chance.
Yeah, I mean I might be wrong.
I think, yeah.
well, I feel like this
use a
Sejuani
mix
never
of, like,
has. And so it's just the difference between Poppy and Sedge is just like the base stats.
I feel like
which
a
is
2-star it should with Bastion and like Bruiser plus Divinicore bonus.
I guess at 2-star
And Dynamo even. Like there's so many
I have a
factors that
question.
should make her cast.
Oh, that's true. It is 4 Dynamo. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I haven't played this board with the Sedge, so
I just feel like she
I
should, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Hero.
Yeah,
What's the
does this only have into take into account the stuff that's on the board, right? You know what you have on bench or people have on bench.
Yes, so the bench isn't reflected in the stats. So for instance, you
Okay.
couldn't see what the best unit to pull in from Aurora would be. Yeah, this
Yeah,
is just
because I'm seeing a lot of sack, so I'm wondering what people are pulling in with Aurora. In that case,
Second Kobiko 1 is ideal.
let's see.
It's also possible that I'm just thinking of other explanations for this, but that burning 12 gold actually affects your placements a lot because
Yeah, I
the
mean
board is
that's
so
very
expensive.
real, probably.
yeah.
The board is so expensive that if you burn 12 gold and then now you're not able to hit the other 2-star 5 cost, then maybe that's why it's worse. And Poppy is so efficient.
Yeah, it's 9 gold
Yeah.
more, which is, I mean, it's still a lot.
Yeah.
9
Yeah,
gold
this
is
board
like a
costs-
round and a half late game.
Sorry, 100. I think 100's undershooting. This board costs like 200 gold.
Yeah. Like normally I would look at the builds tab and just try and like think critically, like maybe when are people playing Sejuani? And yeah, like this like thinking through like why it's good to think like why the stats are the way they are, and maybe like why they're maybe wrong. Like you should always do that if there's something that doesn't kind of line up with your expectations. But then if you do all of that and you still can't think a good reason like why it's reflected the way it is, then maybe the stats are like showing ways. Just last couple of questions here. How do you search for which unit's best cap percent comp? I think we've covered that.
Yeah.
Well, I think I already asked that one.
This is a good one.
How do you search
Yeah.
for how a comp performs with anti-heal, shred, sunder to identify comps where it might be less mandatory? Once you know how mandatory each is, how do you search for which items are the best and on which units? Yeah, this one is a little tricky. So do we have a good comp example for? We could do amp again, like amp Annie.
Wouldn't like amp is frequently like a mixed damage comp? Should we do like one that's like pure 1 damage?
Yeah, like Vanguard Marksman or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one, I guess. Like how
I
screwed
do
are you?
think it's interesting from an anti-heal perspective because I mean, most people are like the general consensus is that you need anti-heal. Timbers isn't enough, but you could imagine a world where maybe that's not actually true.
Oh yeah,
I
that's
think
true
that's a
too.
good one
Yeah.
as well. I like the anti-heal question with amp. And in Vanguard Marksman, for me, my question here is like, if you could choose to make third item Warmogs on Leona versus Even Shroud or Sunfire, assuming you're lacking one or the other, what do you go for? I think I was in a game where I made not Warmogs, and I was in a game with Wajan Iverson, and I think I took the component he wanted, and he commented on his stream. I was watching. He was like, "Oh, why did this guy not make Warmogs?" And it was as if it was such a bad decision. And so maybe he's just upset that I took his component. But
Well, yeah, I've
that's another
actually
day.
been wondering this as well. Like, if you don't have anti-heal and you don't have shred, like again between like those 3 options, like your third item Leona, which one's the best? It's like
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
unknown to me.
See, this is hard. I'm not really sure like how I would approach this. I'll be figuring this out on the fly.
Okay.
Probably what I would do is look at what we could do for more Vanguard. I would first of all like exclude all sources of like anti-heal in this case, and then I would kind of like toggle them on one by one. Then not having a red buff to having a red buff, that was a big jump. Miranda also a big jump, and Sunfire a big jump, but less. Obviously, game count needs to come into this as well. We saw with the survivorship bias that even just having more items, like will improve your placement. So it's hard to say which of these is the best, but it does look like quite a significant jump having.
I guess there's no way to fix your number of items, right, in this query. That'd be the ideal, I think, is you fix
Yeah, not at the moment, but it's becoming increasingly clear that we should add that as a filter. I was actually looking into it yesterday, and I also with these tags, like any radiant item, any artifact, I'm also thinking of adding like any shred item or any anti-heal item, and then you can quickly kind of like toggle that on or off.
Oh, I think that'd be useful for sure.
Yeah.
Because right now, like you could,
though.
like
But
you
I
could
agree,
get
it's
rid of.
100%.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just agreeing with you. My bad.
No worries.
So I was saying, like right now, we see like if you don't have an anti-heal, it's 4.9. So you could get rid of all of these and put in like Even Shot and Last Whisper and see what it is without that. But you're gonna have a bias because you're excluding 3 items instead of excluding 2 items. I feel like that's such a big deal.
Yeah. Let's look at Even Shroud and Last Whisper. Technically, we probably should add the Radiant versions as well, but that would be pretty
that's
low
true.
sample size.
It's about the same.
So 4.88, and then with Even
Yeah.
Shroud, 4.18.
I assume Last Whisper is way better. Actually, it's not.
So it kind of implies that anti-heal and shred are about equally important. It feels like, roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, they're similar stats. I mean, one thing we could do, like, presumably this comp doesn't really care about shred. I guess we're looking at Sunder before. So we could look at Void Staff and Spark as well and just see how that changes things. So yeah, without that, that's 4.38. So that kind of like, the other ones were 4.9. So this kind of shows that you really don't care, which is what we expected to see.
Yeah.
Then we can toggle these on. That's a really good placement, but again, the game count is like nothing. So this, if you got Void Staff, that would probably be like a late game carousel where you're like last pick, I guess.
Yeah.
With Spark, placement isn't as good, but so that to me that validates this approach a bit, that you can just like exclude these, then toggle them on and see what difference that makes.
Yeah.
So that was the first part. Like, how do you search for how a comp performs with Anti-Heal, Shred, Sunder? I think we kind of done that. It's maybe that approach isn't very good to find comps where it's not as important, but if you know the comp, you can tell how important it is in that comp. How do you search for which items are the best? So we kind of did that by like toggling them on. Let's look at Sunder items. So Even Shroud and type it. So this looks like Even Shroud is slightly, it's more common. There's a better place change. We're looking at upper bound here, but so that would indicate that Even Shroud is probably the better pick versus Last Whisper. I think it probably frees up better items on your carries.
I think that intuitively makes sense to me because it's really hard to have Xayah and Aphelios hit the same target a lot of times.
Yeah. That is a big part of it for sure. If you don't put them adjacent, especially like if there's one hex between them, then they often target different.
Yeah, it's like pretty often Aphelios will like not even ult the target he's attacking, and then like Xayah is obviously single target, so
yeah, and it really matters that she kills her target ASAP.
Yeah, so like even if they're next to each other and you have Last Whisper, you would usually want on Aphelios, even though Data here actually has it the other way around. Because Xayah only hits one unit, but like maybe you do want on Xayah. I don't know, because like she's the one who's doing the single target tank killing.
It's also she often has IE, so then you also get more efficiency out of the glove, right? On the
but then it's like your Aphelios is like almost not benefit from it at all compared to Even Shot.
Yeah, exactly. They have to be on the exact same unit.
I have another question. So here, the Even Shot on Leona looks worse than on Jarvan because it's assuming like Leona with 3 tank items, and then you have the Even Shot on Jarvan. Is there any way to see if in that one the Jarvan has other items as well, or is it just the one item?
Maybe a little tricky, but you could potentially, I don't know if this would do the trick, but you could add like Jarvan with 3 items. And you can see it switches there. Like
Okay.
it's better to have it on Leona. As I think what you're saying is pretty correct. You want like a 3-item tank, and then you want even shroud maybe on your like off tank, I guess.
Okay. Because I've been liking even shroud for a couple sets better than Last Whisper, but also you don't want it to die so fast. So that's why I was wondering that.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, I think a lot of
Yeah,
it just
it's
depends
good
on the unit as well. You have to proc the Last Whisper by set. Like here, I think Misfortune is a really good spreader of Last Whisper rate, and so this and the stats kind of show it. But obviously, you only get the player when you have It could also
Yeah,
just be
this is
carried by
pretty-
the fact that Marksman is just so good in this line, Emblem. So.
Oh, also, is there a way to see how much worse is having both than having one or the other?
Actually,
Yeah,
your
so
average
you could
placement would
probably
get
just
better because it would imply you live longer usually.
That's
have
true.
more items. Yeah. You could toggle both on and see.
We would have to include the not yet implemented feature, which is fixed number of items, and then you do this,
Yeah.
and then we would see the real answer.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I would actually suspect your average placement would still get better for the same reason.
Yeah,
Oh,
that makes sense.
assuming that it means you live longer because
Yeah,
the only way you'd get is that you pick it up. So yeah.
Because even if you're in like a low item game, like it would imply you probably live to like some full item component or carousels, or full item carousel specifically, probably.
That's true.
Yeah.
Actually, the fixed item query is still not even fair across games for sure.
Yeah. So
I think it would
another
help
thing
for
you could do
sure.
is fix stage. Like you could say, I only want to look at people that went out between, in stage 5, let's say, or like before stage 5 carousel. Like you could do something like that. But again, that would your overall stats would look pretty bad in that case. But it might help in these kind of comparison scenarios.
I know Chalupa mentioned this earlier. I do think it'd be interesting to look at the amp comp and see like how much worse that does without anti-heal. Because you do get a little bit from Annie.
Yeah, I've actually really wondered this, like how much the anti-heal matters. When I feel like this comp you want to like make a bunch of carry items, not and ideally not that many. Like burning 2 components is kind of painful. So
yeah,
I have one.
Should I add any more filters here, or is that enough? Do you think just 4?
I think 4 amp is enough.
Yeah, 4 or more.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just do the same thing with like the.
And it is red buff and something.
And fire.
So
Yeah,
that's
so this is the
kind of
same.
similar, like
Yeah.
4.9.
Oh, it's very similar to the other one. Wow. Okay.
I would assume it's
That's a
basically the
big
same. Yeah,
right?
I don't really
I
consider
think
it.
the last one it was like 4.1, 4.2 with
For
anti-heal.
Morello, is like 3.7 for Vanguard marks.
4.19, and then Sunfire 4.22.
Okay.
So I guess it's
It's about the same, I think.
yeah.
I guess
Yeah,
we
I
could
think it's
also.
interesting that
Sorry, go
Morello is
ahead.
the best here. I just think it's interesting that Morello is the best here. So you don't like. I feel like if I'm in this comp, I might build like Sunfire on Nico, but it seems to be noticeably worse than Morello on some random backlaner probably.
But again, you
Yeah,
got
the
to think
playwright.
about the sample size because Morello looks a bit lower sample size than Red Buff. And, this is where the graph would be quite useful.
Yeah, true.
You see, like double the play rate on Red Buff, but then Sunfire again. So it's really hard to say, like just off average placement, if this is actually the best performing one, or if this is just survivorship bias again.
People putting the Morello on Annie? Somebody else.
Yeah, Annie.
Yeah.
I think if you're 3-item, if it's gonna be your 3rd item Annie, then I'm down to just put it on Annie, right? Even though like it just allows her to proc the anti-heal like ASAP, even though like she eventually gets it anyway. But it's only on like what 4th cast, right? That she gets it.
Yeah.
3rd cast, whatever.
I mean,
Right.
it's still half an item in terms of stats, like not even kind. So like, you would much rather have it on your main carry unless you have 3 items on that carry, similar to what we were saying about like Leona and Evershroud.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's all the questions. Quite a long session. Thanks for sticking with it.
I appreciate you spending the time with us, Guthers. It's
Yeah, I
super
feel
helpful.
like I
Never
learned
said-
infinite.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it really
I
shows
also-
that you've spent 5 years on MetaTFT. I feel like there's so much stuff you put into this. It's so awesome you could share what little still you shared with us today out of all these other features that are in here that I still don't know about. But yeah, thank you so much. It was so helpful.
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me. And yeah, I also want to say, like, I feel like I've learned a lot just from these questions as well. Like, I'm going to go away and definitely like build some of these features and improvements that we kind of thought about. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming, everyone.